Yes,
Justin, what's
sir.
going on?
Not a whole lot. If you slide over there right now, not a there's a basketball upload. My computer was giving me issues this week, but we will have a video coming on there very soon for y'all. So if you want to slide over Big Ten Show and get over there before we do the Nebraska program overview, and also if you don't mind dropping a like here from me and Mark.
So you're going to take it on yourself to take on the Nebraska program overview.
Oh yeah,
You think you can handle that one?
Oh no, yeah. That one's for that channel, and then
Sure.
we can do our program overview the entire offseason on our live streams. So
that's why we're here, folks.
Yep.
So lock it in Tuesday night, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Here we go. We've got Glenn Thomas, and we also had quarterbacks that met with the media this week. And what is your take?
Yeah, with the QBs got up there, Glenn Thomas, Satterfield got up there, and they shed a lot of light into not only some of the stuff that they're working on. Harberg especially touched on some mechanical stuff that they're working on with him. But overall, you kind of got a feel for how the QB room is transitioning with the young bodies in there, and kind of how things are coming along with the young guys, with Heinrich Harberg in there and stuff like that. And, what Glenn Thomas kind of went into was, he's trying to really work on processing and, putting them in bad looks, or, putting them in against looks that they may not have the right play drawn up for, etc. What they're trying to do is put them in a little bit of tight situations and make it to where, they don't have the perfect play drawn up for the defense or the shell coverage there. So that way they have to stick to what they know, run through their progressions, kind of, refine that quarterback IQ to adjust and make the play. And so they shed a lot of light into the fact that Glenn Thomas and Satterfield, for what they are, a little bit different coaching, of course. Glenn Thomas more in tune with the quarterbacks, getting more into the mechanical stuff. But Satterfield's also in the room with them, very much in the room with them, and they've spoken to just kind of what we talked about before with Matt Rule and these connections and the staff that he's worked with before, and kind of the communication being the same, and outside of a couple of little nuance things, it seemed to be echoed that one of the things that's helping them the most is the fact that it is kind of the same terminology. It's the same structure. It's the same systems between Sat and Glenn Thomas. It wasn't like they brought somebody in and they're kind of having to learn, a new coach speak while trying to develop, the young guys in the quarterback room. He said they're cohesive right now. They are working together, staying self-motivated, which is the biggest thing. And they're talking through scenarios with each other. And Harberg, he said Harberg's taking this kind of like, a competitor. He's there. He's being a leader for those young guys. He's mentoring them. He's helping them with what he knows. And, he's communicating effectively with them. And he's said he knows when it's time to lead, and he knows also when he can ask questions. He can learn something from these guys as well. But I really like the way Glenn Thomas was really talking about specific quarterback stuff. We didn't get that a lot from Satterfield. I just feel like Satterfield was spread so thin between the tight ends, quarterbacks, and OC role, that now that he's kind of focusing on the tight ends and is kind of a liaison between, the quarterback room, and, he can kind of peek in there and stuff like that, while Glenn Thomas really works on the development of these guys. It's going to make a night and day difference. There's a couple of weird questions in there that I was just like, somebody asked, like, how do you communicate with the elite athletes when they've come in here and been told like but Glenn Thomas worked with Matt Ryan and stuff like that. So I don't foresee him having an issue talking to an 18-year-old kid about developing his skill set. And he also said he takes their input on stuff though. But he said what it basically is with the quarterback position, when you come in there, when Glenn Thomas comes in there and he has a thought of what he wants it to look like. But then you have quarterbacks that have been coached a certain way up until that point. You don't want to completely reinvent the wheel, especially when they need to really develop quickly to get ready for, this season as a true freshman. And so he says they try to kind of meet in the middle. He's going to get some ideas of what's comfortable for them and get more information about them. But right now, it's just about reps, 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 execution, execution. That's why they have the team split up the way they do. They basically broke the team up into 3 teams. They have, 6 units playing across the 3 fields. They had the offense, defense, and it was split up, between starters and other guys, the guys who were banged up or injured, which nobody's really injured right now. It's a lot of precautionary stuff. Those guys were kind of coaching and little things like that. And they alluded to that a little bit where it's coaches coaching players. And or sorry, it's coaches coaching players and players also coaching players, right? And that's kind of what he wants to instill. And that's where Matt Rule says you kind of build the foundation and the structures when you have not only coaches policing the players, but players policing each other. And that's where the development really starts to happen, because all these players start to learn a little bit from each other. All these these upperclassmen are instilling what they've learned over their time here, and they've learned some hard lessons into these younger guys. And it's showing, because we have guys like Mario Buford, getting out there and running the CB2 spot and picking up interceptions on film. And it's, a lot of these young guys are already stepping into roles that, like the cornerback 2, for instance, Malcolm Hartzog, I thought that he was going to transition to safety. Well, he's fully transitioned to safety. But that's a good sign in terms of what they're seeing in the cornerback room, because, if you're willing to move one of your cornerbacks to safety like that, that means the young guys are showing that they can hold their own, and they trust those guys. And so the Glenn Thomas overall, I liked what he had to say, gave a lot of insight. He really went into the details. What he was talking about is certain with Harburg, for instance. And I wanted to kind of break this down a little bit in detail, because Harburg talked about elbow drop when you're a quarterback. And these are some of the little things, because I've been praising Harburg as much as people can, because for the situation that he was put into, it was kind of a really tough situation for him. And he is a football player, and he is a football player who can throw the ball. He's not really a refined quarterback necessarily, but the guy is a gamer, and he goes out there and he makes plays. He does what it takes to win. And he talked about even wearing down over the course of the season. By the Purdue game, he was talking about he had taken on a lot of hits because he was running 20, 25 times a game. But just to explain a little bit further what they meant by elbow drop and mechanically what you can kind of look for in seeing if the transition was right or seeing how the transition's coming along. And I'll pull up a couple of screenshots in a second. But when they're talking about elbow drop, and you can see this on a couple of his throws, this is why the consistency is not there, especially on the intermediate and the deep throws. What happens is essentially when you're quarterbacking and you want the ball in the numbers, and then you're essentially everything's from the lower body. You're not really doing much with your arm. It's just kind of a kinetic. You're linking the kinetic chain together, and this kind of like you use your lower body to kind of fling your arm, and it's all about wrist and rotation. And so what they're talking about is when he has the ball here and drops back, he's kind of dropping the elbow down. And what happens when you drop your elbow is you come more over the top, and the elbow doesn't pass through like it should. You want your elbow almost towards your target, and the ball should come as tight to the collarbone and the ear as possible. When you're getting a little bit too out here, that's when you start to airmail throws, and then when you're not disciplined with this arm, your front shoulder gets all out of whack. And so when you finish with your front shoulder, you want to finish almost like this, right? You want this tight, and you want this up by this collarbone. What you'll see on a lot of his throws too is, since he's not disciplined with the elbow and he comes out like this front part opens up and the arm finishes down here. And essentially what that's going to do is it's going to pull throws what it is mechanically you want to keep everything as tight as possible and little hitch in the motion as possible, little drop in the motion as possible. That's where consistency comes from. And you can see a little bit in Dylan Raiola and stuff like that. You know, Raiola's more so finishing here. And I looked at film from Harburg last year and he finishes down here. And he also finishes open like this instead of closed. So those little details are going to be night and day, but Harburg, you know, has about, you know, he's been there for a while. He's got about one season left to learn this mechanical stuff. But what he's struggling with is the fact that when you've played for that long and you really have worked so hard on those mechanics that they become second nature to you, that when you try to change up mechanically, he's struggling with that because you go back to instinct. And basically what it is as a quarterback, it's drill, 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 right? Like you just repeat the motion over and over till it becomes second nature, because when you're in the game, when you hear the moment, you're throwing. You're not really thinking about, oh, I don't want to drop my elbow. I want to bring my arm tight. I want to, finish with my thumb down. So I know I'm rotating, getting the spiral. And that is a lot of the things that caused the issues last year. And I'm curious just to see how quickly they can kind of develop that stuff with him and see if they can really get him into a little bit more of a refined passer. And who knows, maybe by the spring, we start to see the fruits of their labor paying off. He's starting to make a lot of these throws he was missing last year. There's just the problems last year. If you're not consistent with your mechanics, you're not going to be consistent with your throws. And it wasn't all his fault. The receivers weren't the greatest. Our line was improved, but there were moments where he was running for his life still. He did what he had to do. But I really like that they're opening up about what they're working on specifically and stuff that we can actually look for, albeit there's a little bit of an over analysis right now of the QB throws happening that we have, Kalin throwing. There's some video out of Kalin throwing, throwing dimes. Kalin actually connected with Isaiah Nair on a deep touchdown. I believe he also connected with, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank, but Kalin made some great throws. Raiola was off on some throws, but also made some good throws. Not everything was on him. Some of it was timing from the receivers. But from what I've seen and heard, Kalin was kind of the best thrower. So Danny Dimes out there causing a stir and really kind of putting his name on the map. And he's confident as can be. He stepped up the podium. And one of the questions that bothers me too, again, and if you have any questions, I'll just kind of let you ask in a second. But one of the things that bothers me is when a reporter asks a question to a kid like Daniel Kalin, and he's like, coming in here like as the underdog and all this other stuff, to Raiola. But I just feel like that's kind of discounting and taking away from what Daniel Kalin has to offer, because he's no slouch. He was a Elite 11 quarterback, 4-star. And so, he's like, I don't see myself as an underdog. He's coming in here to compete just like anybody else. It's not like he's a walk-on coming here to compete against a 5-star. And so, it's not surprising to hear the good things out of him, but just I feel like asking questions like that is just kind of dismissing what he has to offer. And I'm happy that he's going out there and showing, his arm and the throws he can make, and connect him with, these new guys like Isaiah Nair is huge. I think a lot of what they're going to have to do is build up these connections with these guys, because that's where Raiola was missing a lot. Just getting that repetitive things. NFL players work a lot in the off season, running routes and all this other stuff. And that's just something they're going to have to do in time with the football. And that's why, Raiola and Kalin threw, I think today, and Harburg didn't. And that's probably just because of getting those guys those reps. It's just, trying to let those guys get better by playing football like they've always said. And yeah, we're going to start seeing kind of what they're working on. Finally, some developmental things here in the coming weeks. So a lot to be excited about in regards to that. And Raiola got there up there as well. And had a few things to say, but I'll go into the rest of that here in a little bit. But yeah, a lot of exciting stuff from them there.
So Justin, to piggyback on what you just talked about in regards to reporters' questions, knowing that hey, one guy is supposed to be the starter. He's the 5-star. Somebody else is a little less regarded, even though he's still highly regarded. Danny Kalin. That, and we'll never know how much this plays into evaluation because we all have our internal biases. But when you know that one guy is supposed to be it versus another guy who's a strong recruit, but still not quite what the other guy is supposed to be, whether that clouds in any way the judgment, what the coaches do to try to filter out that thought process of this guy is supposed to be the guy. I may be seeing some things that aren't necessarily there because I'm expecting to see them, or maybe they're tougher in their evaluation because they're expecting so much and to be so wowed by Raiola that if they're a little bit underwhelmed or they see the two players closer than they anticipated, then that surprises them possibly.
Yes. And also, like, you see a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, they didn't pay, Raiola all this money to come here and sit." But Rule is very much the type of coach that is going to make you earn it. And if Kalen earns it, then he's going to get the spot. And like you said, like, a lot of people have it fixated on what they believe to be the case, where Raiola is going to be the clear cut starter. And I've said that too. But I won't say that, like, there's not going to be any competition and that Danny Kalin can't push for that. And if it doesn't matter about money, Rule is the type of coach that whoever performs the best, whoever plays football the best, whoever gives them the best chance to win is who's going to be out there. And so I don't think we can necessarily discount Daniel Kalin. I still think Raiola is the front runner, of course, because right now they're doing a lot of stuff in, shorts, not contact yet. And so we'll see when they get out there and the reps are a little bit more live and the contact starts to come. Of course, they're probably not going to be able to hit the quarterbacks too terribly much, but at least a little bit of contact, right? And to get something in your face, get some pressure. They're not going to be taking them down, of course, but just kind of getting in their chest or something and just seeing how they operate in those throws is going to be key too, because throwing from a fairly clean pocket in shorts is one thing, but going out there and having to really make those quick decisions, they're working on a lot of, pre-shell coverages, because one of the biggest transitions from high school to college to the NFL is in high school, they don't really disguise a lot of the defenses. You know, but in college, they'll come out, let's say they come out in a cover two shell, right? They come out with an open look cover two shell where you have the safeties here. But when the play, when they run the play, all of a sudden you have a cornerback transition here. And instead of playing halves, you got them playing thirds and they're rotated into a cover three. And then all of a sudden, what you thought the play was going to look like is no longer there. That route that you have up the seam or up the middle of the field is not there anymore. Now you have to look more so in the flats and the underneath the thirds, or have a play where you're kind of crossing those guys up. So that's going to be one of the biggest things for them to learn is recognizing open closed coverages, cover two, cover three, cover one, all that stuff, and then adjusting on the fly and having the ability to just quickly process those situations. So they're doing a lot of the right things with these guys. But yeah, I don't see Dylan as just being the guy he's going to run over Kalin. I think Kalen's going to battle strong, and it's going to be a battle up until the end of spring, in my opinion.
Folks, leave a response to this question if you can come up with some quarterbacks who started as true freshmen. So CJ Stroud did not, Bryce Young did not.
Trevor Lawrence did, right?
Okay, so I was going to bring up Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence did after about 4 games. So Kelly Bryant was the starter, and then after about 4 games, even though Clemson had not lost a game, Dabo made the switch. Trevor Lawrence wins a national championship.
Yep.
Deshaun Watson, the same thing. He did not start right out of the gate. It was oh shoot, Cole, I can't think of his name. Anyway,
I
at Clemson. So yeah, about 4 or 5 games in, Deshaun Watson in his true freshman season got the start. Uh, Bo Nix was a game one starter at Auburn his first year, and actually threw a game-winning touchdown pass against Oregon on the final play of the game, his
Yep.
first game in college. But there aren't a lot
Mm,
of first-year true freshmen starting quarterbacks in week one.
there's not. No. And that's where, and I think that's the urgency here. I think that's the urgency with them, like even to the point where, they don't have Harburg necessarily throwing out there. They're just trying to get these guys all the reps that they can. And it's for that reason alone. It's, those guys. I do think the schedule early on helps. The fact that, again, they're not playing against a bunch of stout defenses early on. Those are very winnable games for the first 6 games of the season. That'll be big for developing them. But like you said, like it doesn't happen a lot. And the biggest concern is you really, and I don't think either one of these guys are short of confidence at all. I don't feel like either one of these guys are going to be rattled, but you do run the risk because we see this sometimes when a quarterback gets drafted in the NFL, goes to the wrong team, where they kind of lose that confidence or they get the yips a little bit. The yips being, it's a baseball term too, where it's just kind of like they're in their head about it. Pitchers get the yips, and all of a sudden they go from a 1.3 ERA to a 4.6.
Well,
Um,
it's basically, yeah, you're not allowing, there's a mental block that does not allow your natural ability and talent to flow where you're delivering. It's usually with throwing
yeah,
that you're not delivering the ball with fluidity and letting it just cut loose and doing it naturally based on instinct, that it's a mental block. Yep.
yeah, because if when you start making mistakes, and you're like, I need to stop making mistakes. That's when you run into that block, and so you do always run that risk, and especially at a university like Nebraska, where it is a big stage and all that other stuff, it's always a risk. But again, I don't see these guys as the type to be rattled if they do struggle early on. So, but again, it's just a risk that they're probably going to have to take. And I do see Raiola. He's got enough, I guess, games against top competition, in high school and stuff like that, to where he really is one of those guys that, 33 touchdowns and 1 interception playing at Buford against, high level competition. That's usually not a guy who gets rattled very easily. And so we'll see. Oh, yeah, my camera. It just decided I want to. Hey, we're back. All right. And but yeah, so I see a lot of good in just hearing Raiola speak at the podium. You know, he was talking about just kind of what I talked about earlier, catching up to the speed of the game. You know, one of the one of the things is, getting to know, and he said this before the throws even happened, getting to know them, get comfortable with the receivers. He even said the O line is doing very good at getting protection set where they need to. The running backs are running hard. Um, but they all three talked about the QB room being a very close, tight knit room, and they go out golf together, they go play Madden together. Um, they talk to each other about you know protections and schemes because Raiola and Kalin, of course, have to catch up on the schemes, understand the protections, and with Harburg's experience, he talked about how lucky he is that they have them in there. But his biggest thing is up getting up to the speed of the game, catching up to the speed of the receivers even, um, but taking the younger guys with him and on as he ascends and just trying to focus on football. Not a lot of distractions. Um, he was talking about this stood out to me when talking about the the 6 a.m. workouts where he was getting out there and throwing with these receivers, when they didn't have practice or what they had to do till 10 o'clock. The way he put it is he's like, these guys want to get out there and work. And if they want to get out and work, I'm going to be there for my guys. But the way he put it really much, he said it shows how dedicated his receivers are, right? And that right there is he's not saying it shows how dedicated I am, right? He's not talking about himself being out there at 6 a.m. He's like, shows how dedicated these receivers are. And to me, that's a leader, right? And it's such a small thing, but to me, it is the little small things. Words are important, right? It is the small things that determine a leader versus because a leader is going to, somebody who portrays himself as a leader is going to get out there. They're going to try to say all the right things. But what do they say when they're not trying to say the right things? And that to me stood out because in the fact that he's like, I'm going to be there for my guys. If they want to be out there, I'm going to be out there. And that's the type of guy that you need to be out there, especially as a true freshman, because again, reps, 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 and catching up with these receivers. And it showed a little bit in some of the reps where the receivers were a little bit faster than, maybe he expected, some throws behind him or some timing stuff. But all of that's going to help that get better. And I just love the overall camaraderie and what they're talking about as far as how close and tight knit the QB room is and how they're getting along with these receivers, et cetera. So
We take your comments and questions, everyone. We appreciate the super chat contributions as well. We talk Huskers football with all of you each and every Tuesday, 7 Eastern and 6 Central. Look out for Justin's videos throughout the week and also catch Justin and Sunny over on the Big Ten Show. It's right here on YouTube because everything that you were just outlining from a leadership standpoint, it's not that, okay, you're a freshman cornerback, and sure, that's a lot of responsibility, and that's uh, a big mountain to climb at a big program to gain any starting position. But you kind of do your own thing, learn the defense, learn your technique, focus on yourself versus the quarterback having to do that, but kind of being responsible for everybody at the same time, being looked at as a leader. Even if you're not one, you better become one because it's just kind of goes along with the job to a certain extent. You're responsible for the offense and you're calling the play. You're not calling the play, you're not making a decision on the play, but you're communicating the play. You're getting everyone, making sure everybody's lined up. We know what it is as a quarterback, and to try to improve your own game, focus on your own development, but then also keep in mind that, hey, everybody's looking at me, watching me, and I've got to be that guy at the same time. It's a lot riding on these guys.
yep. But I think the biggest key there is just the fact that he is pushing himself and iron sharpens iron. I think having Raiola and Kalin is going to be what pushes these guys hard this spring and gets them ready. But yeah, it's and Kalin even talked about where, very similar to what Raiola said, it's first off, he did mention that he's a completely different quarterback already since Glenn Thomas got there. So for anyone that was wondering about the development and stuff like that, Kalin said it himself. He's a completely different quarterback already. And Glenn hasn't been there that long. Kalin hasn't been on campus that long. But he did mention that they're pushing each other. And right now he's just working on being the best player he can be. And that's another thing. These guys aren't worried about competing with each other. They're trying to be the best versions of themselves. And I think that's truly what's going to now they are going to get competitive, of course, as the spring goes along. But I think the coaching staff has their minds in the right place and is like, don't worry about winning the job right now. That's going to happen later in the spring. They're not even to the point where they're probably really even evaluating these guys to that level. They're trying to just work on catching them up to speed on things. And so a lot of us are going to sit there and try, and a lot of fans are going to try to sit there and dice these apart and be like, oh, this person's ahead, this person's behind. But the coaches, they're not evaluating these guys to that level just yet. They are going to make sure that they refine them as much as possible. They're going to get them up to speed as much as possible. And then as we get later on to spring, they're going to start to evaluate closer onto the spring game. And it's just going to be a rep by rep thing. It's day in, day out who they're going to, it's whoever wins the day. And, Rule is, again, very much nobody's going to get preferential treatment. You're going to have to earn every rep. You're going to have to earn your spot. And I think right now we shouldn't focus too much on necessarily who's going to be lead. Just focus on watching the development. When you see these little videos, look at the fundamentals. Look how better, they're throwing the ball. Look at how better the throwing motion is. Look at the little nuanced details, because they are all very much raw prospects when it comes to the quarterback position, even Harburg. And so there's a lot of development that can be had in the short amount of time.
Former Husker center and current Philadelphia Eagle Cam Jurgens made it to practice this week. I see that there were also a number of recruits who visited practice. Kearney linebacker Sawyer Shilk in San Francisco, St. Ignatius Prep offensive lineman John Mills. You hearing anything about recruiting? Anything regarding any targets?
Not too terribly much there, but one of the things was interesting, kind of like you mentioned. I believe it was last week. They had a guy at practice, kind of took his official visit to practice, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but wasn't really a guy who has any offers or anything like that. Just a big athletic guy, and it's interesting the way that Rule kind of invited him out to the practice and had him interacting, saw a little video of it and stuff like that. He's getting very creative with how he's working these recruits in, and he's definitely timing the visits to what he wants the recruits to see, what he wants the recruits to experience. I think that's another big thing there, is just like, kind of like you mentioned, bringing a couple guys in here and there to the practice, and they can see how these players are being coached. They get to see how these players are interacting with each other. They get to see the culture. They get to talk to the players, in that kind of environment where they're working. They're out there working on the field. It's not just taking them on a tour. They're seeing these things, and they're interacting with the guys. And I think what that's going to do is kind of show these recruits just what these guys are talking about in terms of this team building, the amount of time they're spending together, building the relationships, and the development of them, and seeing some of these younger guys get out there and make these plays. They talked about pretty much, I believe everybody talked about Demetrius Bell, and like the coaches, the quarterbacks, everybody talked about Demetrius Bell getting out there and making plays. And Demetrius Bell, young guy, redshirt freshman, he's getting out there, and it's to the point where he was being mentioned, first, it's not going to beat out Jalen Lloyd, Isaiah Nair, or he's not going to be out Isaiah Nair, Jabal Banks, but Demetrius Bell is definitely somebody who's going to be a big part of this offense too. So a lot of things there where these guys are seeing these younger guys develop and stepping to 1 and 2 roles, and maybe that gets them the juice that they need to be able to go and say like, oh, I can compete on this team early on, or I like the way they're developing these guys, or I like the way they're coaching these guys, et cetera, et cetera.
We released wide receiver rankings in the Big Ten a few days ago. See if the Huskers snuck anyone into the top 10.
I don't, man. The way it's going to be is it's definitely not going to be. Did you made the rankings, right?
Yes, I did.
So I do think the best receiver on Nebraska is going to be Jamal Banks next year, of course. But I don't think his Wake Forest stats necessarily, unless it was going by film, which you can't realistically watch film on all these guys. I might have him somewhere in that top 20 range, but I doubt any of them currently are going to make it.
Okay.
Where's your first one at?
I got Jabal Banks at 10.
Oh, do you? Okay. Yeah.
I
was thinking probably top 15, but yeah. So, all right. I like your rankings then already, because it's not just looking at stats, box scores. It's taking everything into account, because again, Wake Forest, that offense is not indicative of passing numbers or volume. They really don't have a great quarterback there. So, looking at his numbers and just judging by that, is not much to write home about. Even those numbers are really good, even in that system, But yeah, Jamal Banks, I really don't think people are weighing in just how important of a snag he was. Isaiah Nair was important, but I don't think Isaiah Nair's impact would be near as big as it is without Jamal Banks having committed. Because I remember Isaiah Nair committed first, and I was like, please tell me that doesn't mean Jamal Banks is not committing. Please tell me we land both these guys. And we did. And they're going to open each other up so much. And I think Isaiah Nair is going to be the perfect complement to Jamal Banks. And we've already seen it in some of these throws in practice. They connected with Jamal Banks a couple times. Again, they got Isaiah Nair out on the deep touchdown pass. So yeah, Isaiah Nair is just going to be a playmaker all over the field. It's going to be fun to watch him. And just for peace of mind within the fan base, they mentioned first priorities. Glenn Thomas, first priorities of the season are going into the spring. No turnovers was the first thing you mentioned. Don't beat yourself before the snap. Pre-snap penalties, those things that really put you behind the sticks early on. Because that is something Nebraska has really struggled with too, is pre-snap penalties. Seems like time and time again, after a little momentum over the last few years, there's always a pre-snap penalty, or sometimes even on the first play of the game is a pre-snap penalty. And so really working on that stuff and doing your job and playing hard. And I think all of those things were what made Nebraska so much better last year is simply doing your job and playing hard. Because when you, on defense especially, what the defense did well is trusted the guy next to him. And so they very much were only focused on what they had to do on the field. And when you trust the guys to your left and your right, you can focus more on your assignment, because you're not then thinking like, oh, will I need to go, is there a liability out here? Do I need to pay attention to that just in case he blows the coverage or something like that? And that's how a defense works as a unit. And so doing their job and playing hard, it's very simple stuff that sounds very simplistic, but that is the basis that everything is built off of, is trusting the guy next to you and making sure that everybody out there knows their job. And when you can focus on your job and play with instinct and stop thinking, that's when you can play well. And that's when you can go out there and just play loose, play free, play fun, and have fun.
Bingo. The next show here at the Voice of College Football is just a few minutes away over on the Michigan channel with John D'Adamo hosting Michigan Wolverines live, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Get on over there. Check out a Big Ten rival. Trash talk, troll, do whatever you want to do, or be supportive. You can take either route. We don't care. Michigan Wolverines live, 8 p.m. Eastern time with John. And he's also got TJ Konerski from Ronin Sports Talk and Ferris Khan. They've got a great lineup there talking Michigan football.
Yep. And if you want to challenge market trivia.
Oh, we're going to bring that up?
I had to check that out a little bit.
Since we're there,
you got hosed
and we're going to write off last week as a warm-up. That's what we're going to do. Aren't we, Justin?
Some of those questions were ridiculous, and then you would get a question that was ridiculously hard, and then he would get a question that's so easy. Yeah, the mascot questions.
Those got to go. So It's Take Down the Voice of College Football. It's on the Big 12 channel. The Big 12 channel. Why on the Big 12 channel? We're trying to boost the Big 12 channel. So somebody came up with the idea, hey, and I've been hearing this for years, Mark, take trivia questions, challenge people. People will challenge you, show that you're the best and all that other business. And I am telling all of you that basically this is the time to take me down. I know less about college football today than I probably ever have. More has seeped out of this brain and left me. But after last week's warm-up, Justin, I did tell Joey, I said, no mascot questions. That's not real football.
The stadium questions were ridiculous too. Like the Coliseum, come on.
Yes. Coliseum. Well, yeah, it's the LA Coliseum. That's what we all know. USC football. Nobody follows what corporation threw them $100 million to put their name on the side of the stadium.
That changes the LA Coliseum. All the time. Changes all the time.
That's right. I forgot about those stadium questions. But the mascots, No, I don't want. I want football questions. Who was the coach of the 1968? Da, 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 who was the quarterback that did this? You know, how many passes did all that? That's what I want. That's what we're looking for. So
Yep. So go
then they're
beat.
also making me play tic tac toe at the same time and
Oh
try to.
yeah, that's the hard part. That's the kicker. I remember you saying that the tic tac toe is what's going to make you
I
lose
didn't want
more than
that either. I just wanted a straight. We're just going to keep score.
yeah, like a Jeopardy
Yeah.
style.
I hit 20 of 28, and that's including all those ridiculous mascot questions. So
Yeah.
we'll do a little bit better this time.
So if you want to challenge Mark, now you know.